Morning, everyone. Hope you're all well. So today's learning is dedicated in memory of Leah Bas Bible, Harav Yaakov Tzibin David Aryeh Tzibin Bas Mordechai, Avram ben David Slavin, Sipra Fegel Bas Ruben Baruch, Shana ben Eleli, Bena Bas Bible, from Shoshana Bas Yaakov Shmuel, Caleb Bela Bas Henach, Yimyo Chio ben Moshe Eliezer, Sarah Maka Bas Ben Yamin Shlomo Yechiel ben Moshe Levi, Avram Mordechai ben Moshe ben Moshe. The yahrzeit for today are Riva Bas Yisrael HaKohen Goldblatt, Avram Yitzchak ben Moshe Morris, Eliyahu ben Yitzchak K. That's it. Wish all of them and wish their families long life. So we are just starting the first real teaching what we find in Ethics of the Fathers. We described yesterday and we outlined the basis of Ethics of the Fathers. So let's jump straight in. So Shlosha Dvorim Hevu Mesunim Badim. There are three things, three principles that are the key, as we shall see, to the Torah and to Judaism's continuity, Jewish continuity. What are they? And they may surprise you. One is Hevu Mesunim Badin, that we should be exact in din, in judgment. We'll explain them in a minute. The next one is Va'amidu Talmidim Harbe, that you should establish many students. But the third one is Va'asus Yag LeTorah, that you should create a fence around the Torah. Let's now explain each of these things, and then we can perhaps consider, or you can share with me, why it is that you think that these would be the critical things for Jewish continuity. Sorry, apologies, I didn't say good morning to those that have sent good wishes, to Michael, Peter, Carol, Richard, and David. Good morning to each and every one of you, as well as all the others that are watching and listening. So let's go through it again. The Mishnah tells us there are three critical factors that would ensure Jewish continuity. The first one is Mesunim Badin. Mesunim Badin means that we do not rush to arrive at judgments. We have to deliberate, we have to consider carefully before we come to decisions. I don't know if you've been following the news today, but one of the headline stories is the fact that we, because of COVID, now have a backlog in the judicial system, which means that a serious case, let's say involving manslaughter or rape, you could wait 3 years, something like that, at the moment before that case is actually tried. And there is a debate that's happening right now as to whether we should cut the size of a jury. And that's the whole problem, that a jury trial obviously is problematic when you have to have COVID restrictions. So not all courts have been adjusted to be able to make them safe for juries to sit and listen to cases. So David Lammy has suggested that in fact we should limit the numbers on a jury, which goes back to the precedent is from the Second World War, and therefore from 12 we should go down. I think it's 12 jurors. We should go down to 7. He suggests, in order that we can hear cases and we can start to make inroads into the backlog. That just happens to be in the news this morning. But what am I talking about? So here we are discussing about the fact that we shouldn't be quick to make judgments. And that means that if you want to have people to have faith in the legal system, if you want people to have faith in the Torah, in the verdicts, in the outcomes of the Torah, then you need for people to have confidence that when a decision is issued, it has been carefully considered, that it is not something that is going to lead to a U-turn, or it's not going to lead to disaster. It's something that is going to fill the community with confidence. That's point number one. Now, I think that principle, and this is just my idea, although we are discussing about a judicial system, would equally apply when it comes to people. In other words, when it comes to our interpersonal relationships between us and other people, that also same principle applies. that if we want continuity, if we want to ensure that we don't have like we had at the time of the destruction of the Second Temple, where there was sinat chinam, mindless hatred, people couldn't get along, and therefore, as a consequence of that, sorry, I'm just going to plug in to cut out the background noise. As a consequence of that, it led to disunity, discord, and eventually the destruction of the temple. Therefore, also we, each and every one of us, when we are considering the way we arrive at decisions and judgments, and we make judgments every single second of our day, when people say something to us, we make an evaluation of how we see them. I was on a program last night, late night program, which was training people how to be on a helpline, an anonymous helpline for Jewish teenagers. And they gave us various scenarios. And the scenarios, most of them involved the fact that there was distrust between different generations, between parents and children, or between grandparents and grandchildren. And this type of thing comes because very often we are quick to arrive at conclusions. We are quick to judge. And it works both ways. Parents will hear something, or maybe half a story, and jump to conclusions or make accusations or label, God forbid, their children or grandchildren in a certain way. And that leads to stigma. That leads to people walking around with a lack of self-esteem, self-confidence. And that all comes from this very point, that we have to be very, very careful before we make judgments, okay? Both in courts of law and in our own lives. Point number 2, that he says, is that you should have many students. We know that when the Romans besieged Jerusalem and the writing was on the wall, the end was in sight, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai was smuggled out of the city of Jerusalem. He feigned the fact that he was dead. They put him in a coffin. They managed to whisk him out of the old city, and eventually he stood before Vespasian and he made a prediction. He called him the emperor when he wasn't yet the emperor, and then they arrived and told him he was the emperor, and therefore he gave 3 wishes to Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. Rabbi Yochanan's one main wish was, Ten li Yavne, give me Yavne. What was Yavne? It was nothing. It was a place of learning, and he took his 5 students, and from that place, that oasis at the time of the decimation and destruction of our people and of Jerusalem, he was able to rebuild the Jewish people. If you have students, then you have future. If you don't have students, then there is no future. And there were different approaches, and there are different approaches, and there have been over the course of the millennia. So I'll give you 2 approaches, Hillel and Shammai. So Hillel's approach is exactly like the Mishnah, that we should have many students, as many as possible. The more students, the more wisdom is disseminated to the Jewish people and to the world at large. Shammai said, no, I want to have outstanding students. It's about quality over quantity. And therefore, for me, it's more important that we invest our efforts into ensuring that we have the very best. And that if we ensure that the standard is exceptionally high, then they will be able to go on and educate and ensure to inspire the next generation. But if we just have students that are mediocre, then we are not going to necessarily inspire the next generation, and something will be lost in the transmission of the Torah. So we have 2 different approaches. What approach do we have today? I think we have a twin track approach to education. On the one hand, generally speaking, Jewish education is open to everyone. Every child can go to a Jewish school, be it JFS, JCOS, Hasmonean, all the schools, Emmanuel College, Yavne, there's plenty of choice, primary and secondary. So that is on the one hand. On the other hand, we do have places and bastions of Jewish education, of higher learning, for excellence, for those that want to really refine themselves, yeshivot and sems, which are for the upper echelons, those that really can specialize and ensure that we have outstanding quality in terms of intellect, in terms of Jewish wisdom. And therefore we see a twin-pronged approach, which is interesting. Let's make the final point, and that is, there's much more to say, but we're going to keep it to the time. Va'asu siag leTorah, make a fence for the Torah. So there is even if you have students, loads of students that are going to be able to inculcate and to spread the wisdom of the Torah to the masses, even if you have a system of justice, you have clear laws, right? So therefore, you've got those that are disseminating the word of God. You have those that are determining the word of God, right? So you have your system in place. And yet, there is still a danger despite all of that. And that is, va'asu siag leTorah, make a fence for the Torah. You know, if you were to imagine that you're on a cliff top and you want to see the beautiful view, so you go very, very close to the edge. The closer you go, the more danger you find yourself in. And the more people that go near the edge, the more likely it is that sooner or later there's going to be a tragic accident. And therefore, the same is with the laws of the Torah, that in order to ensure that those laws are adhered to and upheld, and there is no stumbling, there is no danger of people falling off a cliff or the dilution of the principles of the Torah, we have to have fences. And the rabbis are the custodians and guardians of our heritage, and it is their responsibility to ensure that the same Torah, the same laws that date back and originate at Sinai, the same word of God, is being lived today by each and every one of us. So the fences are to protect us. They're not looking, the rabbis, to impose strictures on us and stringencies and make life difficult for us. But it's exactly that. It's a fence. It's a safety net. It's to ensure that we are able to maintain and to continue Jewish life and Jewish teachings in the same way that they were before. And therefore, in different circumstances, we are going to need different laws, different traditions, so that they can be applied and learnt by us all. We're going to stop there. That's the end of the first Mishnah. We're going to go on to learn about Shimon HaTzadik tomorrow. And perhaps we'll also introduce a bit of history about each and one of these great sages. Okay, so let's now recite Psalm 23. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He causes me to lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside still waters. He restores my soul. He leads me in the paths of death. He leads me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Even as I walk in the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You set a table before me in the presence of my adversaries. You anointed my head with oil, my cup overflows. May only goodness and kindness pursue me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord for the length of days. Adon Olamim zocho es nishmos Leah bas Faivel Harav Yaakov Tzibin David Ariel Tzibin bas Mordechai from David Slavin Tzibor Fegelus Reuven Baruch Shalom ben El Eli ben bas Faivel from Shishana bas Yaakov Shmuel Caleb ben bas Henoch Yirmiyahu Chiyah ben Moshe Eliezer Sarah Malka bas Binyamin Shlomo Yechiel ben Moshe Halevi Avram Mordechai ben Moshe Reva Bas Yisrael HaKohen Goldblatt, Avram ben Yitzchak ben Moshe Morris, Eliel ben Yitzchak Kay, Mordechai ben Yosef Halevi Brown, Aaron Mordechai ben Dov Ber Coburn, Shalachuli Elaman Bagadei Dente Menucha Sam Lachin Balarachamim, Yasirin Besisakana Faviolamim, Viasosachat Nishmas Amadonai, Nachlasam, Yanuch Bishlomish Gavam, Venamar, Amen. Lastly, for Shlema prayer, Misha Berach, Avasin Avram Yisrael Yaakov, Moshe Aaron David Shlomo Yivarach Rapesa Chaylim. Bavo shanu mispalim bavoram b'zchazer kadosh baruch hu yimale rachim aleihem lachem alafosam yishlach lem fushlim shmaim lachalvim b'soch shachar Yisrael refuas hanefesh refuas haguf hashbagas magriv amar amen. Wish long life to all those that would be saying Kaddish. We wish everyone well. Keep safe, keep well, look after yourselves. This afternoon it is Holocaust Day, the largest gathering of Holocaust survivors, and it's going to be online. That's organized through JRoots. You can have a look at my Facebook page. It's everywhere, and you can see the links for Facebook and for YouTube, or you can just go direct to JRoots. Have a great day. Look after yourselves. Keep safe, keep well.
Look forward to seeing you very soon.